Road trip in an electric car to a country the size of the United States but with only 36 superchargers? What could possibly go wrong, right? Right? It turns out there are some key things you need to consider before you go. I'll share my story and I'll show you how to plan, prepare, and what to watch out for when going on a long-range EV trip. I'm going with my friend Nick from Sydney to Adelaide, South Australia. On our way, we want to stop at a few wind and solar farms, so we're taking the direct route through the outback. The problem with that is, for the most part, we'll be out of reach of the fast DC charges. Now, additionally, we're going in a convoy of 2 Tesla Model 3s, which will make things interesting, but more on that later. So Nick's Standard Range Plus model has a theoretical range of 380 kilometers, which represents an average electric car on the market. My long-range version is heavier, has bigger battery and 2 motors, and on paper can get up to 500 kilometers. We're being responsible with fatigue and time behind the wheel, so we're stopping halfway to South Australia for sleep, and then staying in Renmark, which splits the distance into 3 segments. Let's start with discussing how to plan a long-range EV trip, what software to use, how to plan your charges, and how to choose places to stay. Then I'll tell you how to prepare for the drive and what things you need to take with you. Once you're on the road, there's a few things that you need to know that I wish I knew before I went. As a bonus, I'll cover specific challenges related to going in a convoy in multiple electric cars. Let's talk about planning. By far, the best software I've found is ABRP, a Beta Route Planner. It's got a silly name, but it's purpose-built for electric cars. It's got a massive database of vehicles and their ranges. It has a growing database of charges. It takes most things into account when it comes to range and what affects the range. It's freemium, so most of the features we'll be discussing are free, but it's also a premium version which has live weather, live status of charges, CarPlay support, Apple Watch support, and more. I'm going to drop a link to ABRP down in the description below. And for general planning, we're going to use the web version. It has big UI, it has all the features. After you set it up, you create a trip. From there on, you can use the mobile version, which uses GPS to track your location as you go on your trip. So let me show you how I set it up, how you can tune and tweak all the settings for a long-range EV trip. If you follow the link in the description or just go to Beta Route Planner, you'll arrive at this page. What you want to put in the beginning is your home address, where you start, and the final destination of your trip. So in the default settings, it's going to take us through Melbourne and through all the fast charges, which is great. But my road trip is going through here. I'm going to add a waypoint. I'm going to click this button and I'm going to put Renmark Club. I'm going to move this to be in the middle as the second waypoint after starting point. So that if I press the big blue button, it's going to take us through some of the slowest charges. You don't have to create an account to use ABRP. You can use it just fine with all the features without an account. And it's every time you modify the plan, it generates a unique URL that you can share with others. But creating an account would allow you to share it between your web version of the app and the mobile version on your phone. I'm going to click dismiss now. This is the plan modified to go through here, through Mildura, through the outback, and through some of the slower charges. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click back and we're going to go into the settings. I'm going to start off by clicking detailed to enable all the settings and choosing my car model. That's the most important option, of course. I'm choosing the Tesla Standard Range Plus because we're going in 2 cars and we're going to choose the car with the lower range. The departure state of charge is something that might save you some time if you put it to 100%. It's not good for the battery to charge to 100%, but you're not going to be doing this that often. It's okay to start with 100% charge and charge overnight to full battery. Reference consumption is something that comes from the database of ABRP. After you select your model of your car, you can switch between different units. It might not be your average consumption. So if you use your onboard computer and your Tesla tells you that your average consumption is higher or lower, you can adjust it here. And I definitely recommend doing that. Battery charges, in the fast charges, what you want to do is enable all the charges that your car can use. In case of Tesla Model 3, that's definitely those 2, which is Tesla provided superchargers, but also CCS. This is the type of plug, CCS, for fast DC charging. And enabling that will show you fast DC chargers that are not Tesla chargers. That's quite important. And level 2 would be the non-CCS level 2 chargers, the DC chargers like 50 kilowatt. charges an NRMA put in the middle of Australia. If you have the CHAdeMO adapter, you can also select this one. I didn't have a CHAdeMO adapter on my trip, so I'm gonna leave it unselected. Now, network preferences is also something that you might look into later, but by default there should be nothing here. Make sure that you don't have anything that you don't want to have in here, in this bird under this menu. Make sure that if you're planning a new trip that there's nothing here. That's something you might use later. Now, destination arrival state of charge and charger arrival state of charge are values that reflect how comfortable you are with arriving at the next charger with a really low state of charge. So some people might put it to something like 5% and they're fine with running down their battery to really low levels. Some people might put it to something higher and have a bigger margin of error. We're going to be talking about things that affect range in a moment, but from my experience, 5 to 10% margin of error is something that I'm comfortable with. So setting something like, let's say 15% will make ABRP adjust your plan accordingly and allow you to have a little bit more battery as you arrive at the next charger. The charger maximum state of charge is how much you're willing to charge at a charging stop to maximize your range or to decrease the driving time. So 100% is okay for long range trips. I wouldn't change that. If you're worried about your battery health, you can drop it to something like 90 or 80%. But keep in mind you're going to be stopping for charging more often. Battery degradation is something that you need to figure out for your specific car. 5% is a realistic value for a Tesla Model 3 after a year or two of ownership, but you can get a more precise figure by using one of the Tesla mobile apps that connect to your Tesla account. They download the telemetry from the car and they can derive the battery degradation from your recent trips. Charging overhead informs ABRP how long does it take you on average to plug in your car and work around the charger. So 5 minutes, the average is okay. From my experience, we usually spend really much longer at each charger to just look around for a toilet break, and we generally never rush back to the charger when the car is finished charging. So the charging overhead is semi-useful unless you're rushing, unless you're really in a hurry and you wanna minimize the time you're at each charger. Then the charging overhead will give you a more precise time estimation. Speed is the most important thing that affects your range. If you have ABRP Premium, you can have real-time traffic information. You can enable that. 100% means that you will be traveling at exactly the speed limit on given stretch of road. So if it's 100, 110, 60, 100% means here that you're going to be always at the speed limit. If you want to maximize your range, you definitely want to put something like 90% and 80% and actually stick to it. So if it's 110, you're actually going 100 or going 90, which will drastically increase your range in your electric car. Just speed is similar to what Tesla does when it detects that you might have trouble reaching your next charger stop because of the speed, the road conditions, and because of increased consumption. So just speed is an option where ABRP tries to be smart about lowering your maximum speed just to increase your range slightly so you can reach the next charger, maybe a faster charger on your way. So leaving that on is usually a good idea. You don't want to skip the road conditions section. So the ABRP can have real-time weather information. You can enable that if you have ABRP Premium. Definitely that will be more useful in the mobile app, not in the web app when we're planning days or weeks before a trip. Headwind definitely decreases your range significantly. So you can change between head and tailwind by clicking this button, and you can put in the wind speed. This is something that it's hard to anticipate in advance unless it's a stretch of road that you know that always has head or tailwind, and you can put it in here. From my experience, a strong headwind drastically decreases range, even in a really aerodynamic car like a Tesla Model 3. Having that information will be useful, will make the calculations more precise. Temperature is important, especially for the extremes. So if the weather forecast is telling you it's going to be really high temperature, really low temperature, you want to have that in. The temperature of, say, 40 degrees centigrade means that the car has to spend a lot of energy cooling the cabin and cooling the battery pack. Road conditions section, when you press this here, this is about the extremes again. So if you anticipate it's going to be raining or snowing, or it's going to be heavy rain or snow, all that affects your range because of extra friction and extra energy that the car has to spend. Avoid on route section is something that is similar to all the other navigation apps. You can set it to avoid ferries, highways, or toll roads. Extra weight. Remember that the car has to transport the weight of yourself or the driver, but also all the passengers and all the extra things that you put in your boot, in your trunk, all the things that you have on your roof, say bikes, surfboards, or anything else. You don't have to be precise here, but be vigilant about knowing how much more weight you're carrying with you on your trip, because it will add up over longer distances and it will decrease your average range. So I think I'm done with setting all the conditions here and adjusting the settings. So I'm going to press the big blue button to calculate my route. It's not finished yet. It gives you a nice overview of all the charging stops. Each of those sections will tell you how long you're going to charge for, how much energy you're going to add. In the first supercharger that we're going to stop at, we're going to arrive at 23% of battery, and we have to charge to 75% to be able to continue our journey. Next to the Tesla logo, here's the visualization of the charging stalls. So the superchargers are all fine, but when I scroll down, now I can see all the slower charges. So a single rectangle here means it's a single stall charger. I can click one of those in the Randver Park, for example, and it's a 50 kilowatt charger with two plugs, CHAdeMO and CCS, but it's a single stall. You can't use both of the plugs at the same time, you can only use one, and you can only charge one car at maximum of 50 kilowatts. The next thing I like to do is to go to the starting location at my home when I have 100% battery and click this little cog icon and set the departure time and date. So I'm going to set it to, say, 27th of May, and remember, the sooner you start, the better. So I'm going to put in 9 AM. It's realistic for me to get out and be ready to hit the road. After changing the starting time, I'm going to press the blue button again to recalculate my route. Now that I have the starting time set, the times at each charges will be more accurate. So next thing I like to do is to figure out where I'm going to have a lunch break. This charger, Gandagai Supercharger, I'm going to be there around 1:17. This is a good place to stop for lunch. I press this little cog icon and I'm going to click this button at a stop around this waypoint. So ABRP will try to find you a restaurant, a hotel, or a shopping place with a type of food, say, and type of amenity. You don't need to be precise with those settings. What I'm more interested in is the time. So I'm going to tell ABRP that I'm going to stay for 1 hour for lunch, and I don't want it to go too far from the charger. So I'm going to set, say, 500 meters away from the charger. I'm going to press the blue button again. It will show me a list of nearby amenities. It's not that important because maybe you will find something better when you're there. I'm going to choose say Subway, which is 200 meters from the charger. If there's nothing interesting, I can also choose a different charger nearby. So here's a charger Gandagai in the same location, or maybe there's an NRMA charger, but just keep in mind that those chargers might be slower. So I'm going to keep Gandagai Supercharger. I'm going to choose Subway as my place to eat, and I'm going to confirm with the big blue button. Now that the stop is put in, I can see that my charging is 48 minutes, but I'm going to spend 1 hour there at the location. Just keep in mind with Supercharger, with fast chargers, you are expected to move your car from the charger when you finish charging. Now that my lunch is sorted, we're going to set up our overnight stay. So I have found a place in Hay. So we're going to arrive at Hay around 6:43 in the evening on the first day. What we're going to do now is go to settings for Hay. Because I already have a place I found on Airbnb, I could use this option and add a stop around this waypoint, select hotel, and set it for, say, 10 hours of stay, which is realistic between the time I arrive and plug in the car and unpack and stay, and then in the morning I'm ready to go hit the road. You can use this option, but you can also just set the departure time. So we are starting on 27th, so the next day is 28th, and I'm gonna set up the departure time to be 9 AM and I calculate the route. You can see the effects of the change in the overall plan. The town of Hay, that location, has a stay between 14 PM to the following day 9 AM, so 14 hours. And it also has a charging session for 50% to 61%. So we're going to correct that. We're going to probably charge the car overnight, or we're going to use the local charger. We're going to charge it to 100%. So I'm going to set it up here and charge to 100%. So I'm still keeping the 9 AM departure time. I'm also going to assume charging the battery to full. I'm going to press the button again. Okay, we're almost done. The only thing I forgot is here in my overnight stay in Renmark. We're going to arrive in the afternoon around 2 PM. And we're going to be taking off the following day at 9 AM. However, we also have our mobile charger. So the mobile charger charges in Australia at about 2 kilowatts, and we're going to charge through the night. So let's say for 10 hours. That will add some extra range. Notice how adding the Renmark Club settings here and putting in 2 kilowatts of the Tesla wall charger, how it will give us around 18 kilowatt hours overnight. So from 45% to 83% of battery state. Actually, we can travel further down towards Adelaide, and we can use a charger that is right here in Tanunda, and we just have to top it up for 12 minutes and we can reach our destination sooner. I also really like the table view that gives you a general overview of all the charging stops and the departure and arrival times. So if you're not using the mobile app, or you don't want to use the mobile app, you can have this table, you can take it with you, and you can follow your progress and you can track your time. Quick note, if you like to use a different program for the rest of the planning process, you can use the share button. It allows you to export that information from the table to Excel in a tabular format. You can add the stops and the departure to Google Calendar, and also share the ABRP link. So whenever you change any of the settings on your trip, the link here and the address bar on top, it will update. There's a unique identifier here. So literally taking this address, copying and pasting and sending to someone, they can open it up and they're going to see exactly the same settings. Just remember, if you change anything in here and the values update, then that generates a new address. By far, the thing that affects your range the most is speed. That is because of all the forces that affect your car while you're traveling. There's rolling resistance, which is related to the wheels on tarmac, but the bigger force is the air resistance or drag. And that force grows exponentially with speed. Even small changes in your average speed will massively reduce your effective range. As an example, here's a graph for Tesla Model 3. Look at the difference between 80 and 90, 90 and 100 kilometers an hour. The difference is staggering. Consider also very hilly terrain or mountains. So electric cars have the major advantage over fossil cars that they can regenerate energy through regenerative braking. However, keep in mind it's not 100% regeneration. That means if you go in a really hilly terrain and you climb up really steep hills and then you go down, you will not regenerate all of the energy. Something you definitely should consider is battery degradation. This is going to be unique to your car. As an example, Teslas usually lose a few percent of their battery in the first 2 years of ownership. And this is something you need to figure out for yourself. You can use, for Teslas, there's a few apps you can use, you can install on your phone. They connect to the car, they download the telemetry from the car. They can calculate how much battery degradation you have so far. Make sure to put that value into ABRP for more accurate planning. Another obvious thing that uses energy is conditioning the cabin. That means air conditioning. From my experience, is between 5 to 10% of range reduction in case of really hot day when the air conditioner, the compressor has to work really hard, or when it's really cold and you want to warm up the cabin to livable temperature. Something you can try to maximize your range is in terms of hot days, you can try pressing the AC button in a Tesla, press the blue button to turn off the compressor, and then increasing the fan speed and see if that is comfortable enough for you. For really cold days, what you can try doing is turn off the air conditioning. In Teslas, you press and hold fan icon, and then try turning on your seat heaters. Seat heaters usually use less energy than the heating element in the air conditioner. Even if you don't use air conditioner that much, keep in mind that extreme conditions, really low temperatures, really high temperatures, will affect the car itself. So with electric cars, they have a sweet spot, they have an optimal temperature of the battery pack to keep it healthy and to reduce degradation. So that means in really hot days, the cars will have to spend extra energy for cooling the battery pack. On really cold days, they have to warm it up. Consider extra weight. So extra weight is something that you specify in ABRP as well. It could be your sports equipment. It could be something that you put on a roof, like a roof rack. It could be the extra passengers that you have for half of your trip. And it adds up. The longer your journey, the more difference you will see with the extra weight added to the estimation. Stuff that will definitely affect your range is road conditions. So, of course, heavy rain, heavy snow, those kind of extremes. Headwind has massive effect on your range. It can drop your range by 5 to 15% depending on the strength of the wind. Let's talk about your stays. your accommodation. Definitely make use of your mobile charger. Standard wall socket will add between 10 to 15 kilometers an hour. So if you assume around 10 hours of sleep and packing and unpacking, you're looking at 100-150 extra kilometers of range in the morning. I definitely recommend to plug in as soon as you arrive. So as soon as you arrive at the place, before you start unpacking, plug in your car to have as long of a charging session as possible. Definitely don't be that person. Always ask for permission before you plug in your car. On Airbnb, what you can use is message host before you make a booking and just send them a message. If it's a hotel or motel, just give them a ring and ask if that is okay. So ask if you can plug in your car and top it up overnight. If they ask about cost, your car will usually consume overnight between 20 to 30 kilowatt hours, or around 13 kilowatt hours in USA and Japan. So depending on your local electricity rate, you can easily calculate the cost. It should be just a few dollars. You can also ask if the wall socket that you're going to use next to the carport or in the garage, if it's grounded for 15 amps. So that is the minimum required for the wall chargers, and it's usually the case for the outdoor sockets, which are used for barbecues, patio heaters, lawn mowers, etc. Just to be sure, I would ask the owner or the host if they know if it has been grounded for 15 amps. If you're going with your friends to a more electric car, you all want to charge overnight, there are some extra considerations that I'm going to mention later in the video. Preparing for the drive, let's talk about equipment that you need. I definitely recommend having a spare tire or a tire repair kit. Teslas don't have a spare in the boot, so I definitely recommend getting at least the Tesla tire repair kit. It's not very expensive. It consists of a little box, which is just a pump that connects to the cigarette lighter socket, and there is a special sealant that you pump into the tire that seals the fracture and allows you to continue driving. Number two, you definitely want to take your wall charger, your standard charger that plugs into a wall socket. This is how the Tesla mobile charger looks like. It comes with the car. It's definitely great for emergencies when there's no other charging options, but also is really good for overnight charging, so you can top up the car while you sleep. Number three, you definitely want to have an extension cord. The longer the better. Make sure it's rated for 20 amps or more to reduce the risk of any electrical fires or overheating. That will come in handy in case where you have the wall socket are further away from where you park your car. Nice to haves, Type 2 cable. So for the Tesla have Type 2 connection, some of the public chargers don't have a cable. So it's just a charger, but you have to supply your own cable. So it's a male to female connection. One end goes to the charger, the other goes to the car. A 3-phase adapter, something that allows you to connect your mobile charger to a 3-phase socket. You can find them in caravan parks or trailer parks or camping grounds. For the Tesla mobile charger, they come in shape of a pigtail. So it's a special adapter that plugs directly into the mobile charger and allows you to connect to the socket. Additionally, something you can consider is a CHAdeMO adapter. So CHAdeMO is a little bit older standard of connecting and charging electric cars. It's not that common nowadays. Just in a pinch, you might want to have that one in case you're stranded and there's a charger and it only has a CHAdeMO connection. It's low on my list because the CHAdeMO adapter is surprisingly expensive and hard to get. So you might consider getting or borrowing one when driving and sharing that when driving in a convoy in multiple cars with your friends. Okay, so preparations week before. What I recommend is looking into the COVID restrictions. In Australia, there are some restrictions when crossing the borders between states. Sometimes you need to fill an internet form to get some kind of confirmation or registration. Sometimes they require you to have a valid COVID test. In Australia, there are also import restrictions, especially for fresh food. In USA, that might be restrictions on possessing a gun. You might want to look into road tolls and how those work in different regions, different states. In Europe, there's a system based on stickers, so you want to have all the road toll stickers put on the windshield. Preparations, day before. You definitely want to charge your car to 90 or 100%, either in your using your home charger or a nearby DC charger. You want to maximize the distance you can travel on the first leg of your journey. That's going to save you a lot of time. Number two, check your tire pressure. That will affect your range. So for Model 3s, that's around 42 psi for the standard range and long range, and the wheels that come with those. Number three, go to sleep early. You want to have the energy and you want to enjoy your trip being rested the next day. On the day, definitely get up early. So you want to avoid the morning traffic and you want to start your journey as soon as possible to avoid driving at night. To expect the unexpected. So things might happen, especially if it's your first long-range EV trip. So it's better to have some extra time to spare. On the day, you definitely want to check for major road incidents. So I recommend using either Google Maps or Waze app on your phone. What you do is you set the destination, and it's going to show you on Google Maps, it's going to show you little warning icons on the routes. In Waze, it's going to exactly tell you what is happening and what the delay might be if you go on the road. Number 3, check charges status. So you know your route and you know the charges that you're going to be using on the way. What you want to do is either use ABRP or, better yet, use the official websites or mobile apps of the charger networks. You want to look out for outages. You want to see if there's any serious outages, disabled ports, or maybe the whole charger is offline. In case there's something wrong, you can still reroute and you can change how you reach your destination. You still have time for that. Here are the settings I recommend changing before you go. So you definitely want to maximize the regenerative braking. In Teslas, you switch the regenerative braking in driving menu to standard. In other cars, that might be accomplished by using the little flaps on the steering wheel or going to menus and setting regenerative braking to maximum. You want to switch the stopping mode to halt, which will also extend regenerative braking. It will basically stop the car. If you release the accelerator pedal, it will stop it to 0 and consume most energy and put it back in the battery. You also want to switch your car to eco mode if your car has that. In Teslas, there's something called acceleration chill. It doesn't increase range on long runs that much. However, if you have a heavy foot, it will limit the power output. So if you press the accelerator pedal really hard, it's not going to accelerate as much and not going to consume as much energy. Let's talk about some of the things that might catch you off guard while on the road. So to me, number 1 is the reported range is not what it seems. So what I found is that my car, even under the best conditions, seems to be too optimistic about the range. Regardless if I use the remaining range on the top of the screen, the generalized one, or I go into the moving average and I select, say, average for 25 kilometers or 10 kilometers, I never seem to be able to get the full range that the car thinks will have. I always seem to have around 10% below that, and I always take that into account. Just remember about all the things that can affect your range. Speed that you're driving, the weather, the inclines, the declines, the headwind, the weight, the extra weight that you might add on while driving, say like getting more people in the car. All those things will affect your range, but you don't have to think about them all the time. Have a margin of error. So in case of my car, I figured that it's around 10%. So if the car tells me I have 300 kilometers of range left, I can safely assume it's going to be around 260 to 170 kilometers real world range that is left, until we're getting into the really dangerous buffer zone when it says the range is 0 or 1% and you don't really know when the car will shut down. So you definitely don't want to have that experience. When it comes to chargers, never assume the sticker output rate. What I mean by that is, if you have a charger in ABRP or somewhere when it's marked at 50 kilowatts, it's the peak rate. It's the highest rate it can output. But in reality, you're going to get 40, 45, maybe 38 kilowatts when charging. And if you have a charger that is 150 kilowatts, you might be getting an average of 100 or 120 kilowatts. So there's always a charging curve. So it starts really slow, then peaks up, and then as the battery gets progressively charged, the charging rate is going to drop. But never do any calculations based on the peak output rate. Also, chargers with multiple stalls might share the current between the stalls. So if it's really busy and there's multiple cars charging, the output rate for each car might be lower because they share the power of the transformer. Chargers also can be unreliable. So during my journeys, I found that some chargers would just have random problems that are not visible in the app before you just arrive. You plug in and maybe it charges for 5-10 minutes and then disconnects on its own and you don't know why. We had another problem when we tried to plug in two separate stalls, one charger, and it was fine with one car. After plugging the second car, both would disconnect. And we tried several times, it would just always kind of do that. The good news is that usually the charger networks have some kind of phone support line, and I definitely recommend using that. So in our case, we called the support line, and they had surprising amount of control over their chargers. Not only they could see the fault, they could see the reason why the charger faulted, but also they can do a lot of remediation remotely. They can restart the chargers. They can do something with the transformers, help with the billing system if it fails. If you're in a pickle, try calling them, and they're usually 24/7 helplines, and they might be able to help you. For charging time, a general rule of thumb I have is that the slow chargers usually take more time than I would like. The 50 kilowatt chargers or slower, they usually take more time. They never reach 50 kilowatts. They usually charge at like 40, 35 kilowatts. and they can take hour, 2 hours to charge to 90% or enough for me to continue the journey. The fast chargers on the other hand seem to be charging faster that I can finish my lunch. So usually what would happen is we would arrive at a fast charger with say 5-10% of battery, we would plug in our cars, we'd go for a lunch, and within say 30 minutes we would be eating our lunch, we would get a notification, please move your car because the charging session has finished. Quick note about the charging at Airbnbs and motels and hotels. If you suspect the wiring in the building is old and you might overpower it and cause some problems, you can decrease the charging rate. In Tesla, you can do that on the charging screen. There's a little button next to the amps. You can decrease the number of amps, thus making the charging slower, but also just safer for the socket and for the wiring in the building. Let's talk about going in a convoy, 2 or more electric cars. There's some pros and cons that you need to consider. Pros, number one is you can share cables and adapters. That's a no-brainer. You can take less things with you, and if you have some adapters that the other person doesn't have, you can just share it on the go. Number two is the safety. It's really nice to have someone else with you, just in case something goes wrong, there's some kind of accident or unexpected circumstance. There's always someone with you that you can count on, and you have 2 cars. So if something goes bad, you can hop in the other person's car and continue your journey, or get to the nearest service station, or maybe do a tow. Number 3 is definitely more fun. I enjoyed my road trip tremendously. I wouldn't do it any other way. It's great going with someone and sharing the experience, and not only the experience of visiting new places, but also kind of driving the future and driving really cool cars together. So for cons, number 1 might be sharing single stall chargers. Because we went through a less frequented highways, there were 50 kilowatts slower single stall charges, and we had 2 cars to plug in. So that created some trouble. Even if there are multiple stall chargers, you have to consider that if you're driving 2 or more electric cars, there might not be enough stalls, or they might be all used. So what you want to do is you want to figure out how many stalls are on each charger station. You can use ABRP for that, and they have a little icon that shows you if there's 1 or 2 or more stalls. However, sometimes that information is not precise, so you can try using the official website for that charging network, find that charger and seeing how many stalls it has. Or you can fall back to Google Maps. So sometimes on Google Maps you have photos, so you can see how many stalls are there on the photo. Or you can try using Facebook or Facebook groups, and sometimes there's photos of people that visited those charging stations, and you can count stalls on the photo. You might want to consider how busy the location is. That information is also sometimes up to date on ABRP, but you can also use Google Maps. Sometimes Google Maps will show you how busy it is in different times of day. It's not super precise, but it is something that you could use, and especially a commercial location next to, say, shopping malls or like service stations. Sometimes they might, in urban areas, they might get busier, and that means you might have to wait for a charger to free up before you can start your session and continue your journey. I'm not trying to blow it out of proportion, just also consider that the charging stalls, this situation mostly matters for the slow chargers. So in case like the ones that we use, the 50 kilowatts chargers, having a single stall or 2 stalls made a big difference. But for the fast chargers, even if there's a lot of traffic and you have to, a lot of people charging and you have to wait a little bit, the fast chargers are fast enough that you can even share the plug. You can charge for 30 minutes one car, 30 minutes another car, and you're good to go. So the fast chargers are fast enough that it's not that big of a deal. When you're driving 2 or more cars, you also have to accommodate for different ranges. Okay, so we had a long range and a standard range plus Model 3, and when planning, we used the car with less range as a reference. The car with the long range would have some extra battery, would have some buffer, but if we wanted to travel together and we wanted to charge together, we would usually fall back to the car with the lower range. It took a little bit longer in each stop, but it didn't matter that much. The difference is not that big, and also you can consider that some of the cars with the lower range might be lighter and might have better efficiency on the roads, especially on longer trips. Another thing you have to consider when traveling with multiple cars and charging is the charging overnight at Airbnb or motel or hotel. Just try not to overpower the socket or breaker. When plugging 2 of those mobile chargers to wall sockets, it's like plugging 2 space heaters that they can consume quite a lot of energy. Definitely don't use any adapters, multi-plug adapters or strips or anything like that. Try to connect the chargers to separate receptacles with a single socket. So ideally it's on a separate circuit and a separate breaker, but you usually you don't know that. But try to have at least separate receptacle, just in case, just to decrease the load on the wiring. If you suspect the circuitry in the building is old, remember you can always, in Tesla, you can decrease the current on the charging screen. You can go and decrease the number of amps, and you can drop the number of amps for each charger so that multiple cars will charge slower, but you will not overpower the circuits. So overall, it was an amazing experience. I wouldn't change much. Seriously, there's tools to do the preparations, and you need to have some gear with you. But in the end, we just enjoyed our trip a lot. If you get a chance and you can buy or borrow an electric car and go on a road trip, highly recommend it. It's amazing. I wouldn't change much. I enjoyed every minute of it. Charging and the preparations, all those things. It was too easy. Once we were on the road and we had everything planned, we were just enjoying ourselves, enjoying the trip, enjoying the cars, enjoying the scenery and the adventures we had. But we had almost no adventures, nothing serious regarding charging or any special considerations to the fact that we were driving electric cars. It's highly recommended. Thanks a lot for watching, and if you have any questions, I can help you anyway. Drop a comment in the section below, and I'll try to answer all of them. But if you liked it, you can consider dropping a like, you can subscribe to the channel for more content like that, and I'll see you next time. Have a lovely day. Take care.